in front of an audience. So I can say that this has been a learning process for me, but I'm also going to share some things with you tonight that I think will help increase your confidence and reduce your anxiety when it comes to speaking in front of people. I will say that for me, on a platform like this, where it's kind of just me in a room with a camera, is a little less stressful and make me feel anxious than if I'm standing in front of a crowd. All of those faces, and I kind of naturally think that they may be judging me or not liking what I'm saying. So this is a little bit easier because I don't quite feel your McJudgy eyes quite so much, but it still can be a little nerve-wracking. But I have about 16 or 17 things that I think will help you reduce some of that anxiety and take the plunge to actually speak in public. I think it's going to be a necessary skill, especially if you are a brand owner, a blogger, a product maker, if you want to be a coach, if you want to do anything along those lines. It is definitely going to be something that is needed and necessary. It's a skill that you should have, if for no other reason than to help you network. So for me, speaking in public and being able to speak in public has really helped with networking. It's helped with talking to people that I need or want to talk to, because I view it in that vein, and I try to just have that confidence there. Yesterday on a Periscope, someone asked me, how do you have confidence, or how do you gain confidence to speak in front of people? And I said, when I finally made the choice to believe two things, what God said about me and what I believed about myself, my confidence increased, and I was able to be consistently confident. And so for me, those are the two foundations to my confidence, and therefore I don't have as much of a challenge or an issue getting on Periscope, speaking in front of people, because of those two things. I realized, but it wasn't always like that, and I realized that all of us are at different places in that journey. So hopefully tonight you're going to get some actual practical tips that you can use that will help you reduce the anxiety and increase your confidence when it comes to speaking in public. So again, for those of you that may have just joined me, my name is Adeea Rogers, the Trendy Socialite. Give me a few hearts if you're excited about this topic and you're ready to hear the more than 10 tips that I have for reducing anxiety when speaking in public. Thank you so much. The first tip that I have is to acknowledge that you're anxious or nervous. Dr. Phil says you can't change what you don't acknowledge. So it is very important that you acknowledge that hey, how are you? That you have these feelings, right? It's perfectly okay. It's perfectly normal. And it is something that we all have to deal with. For me, I have spoken in front of crowds. I have spoken, I've done YouTube videos, so I've spoken I've spoken in that regard. Obviously, I'm on Periscope now. And I still get a little flutters in my stomach whenever I'm on to speak, whether it's in front of a camera or if it is in front of an audience. Yeah, I'm glad you're live too. That's awesome. So the first thing, sorry, I just saw a CNN alert come up, but you have to acknowledge that you are anxious or nervous. Like I said, Dr. Phil says, hi from Durham, yay. Thank you, I appreciate it. You can't change what you don't acknowledge. And so you have to acknowledge that you're a little nervous or you may have some anxiety around public speaking. Once you do that, then you're able to move on and to sort of deal with those things. And the second tip that I have is figure out what scares you. I think that that's really important, that you figure out what scares you about speaking in public. Is it the fear that people aren't going to like what you say, or that they're going to laugh, or that thank you, I appreciate it, or that they are going to, not like what you say, be very critical, walk out even. Just figure out what you think it is that scares you. That's where you have to do some real soul searching and introspection. For me, my fear and my anxiety is around, will they like what I have to say? Will it be helpful? Will all of the time that I put in produce what I want it to produce in terms of providing inspiration or information or guidance or whatever my goal is for that particular encounter? That my fear is that it won't happen, that what I really want to communicate, like from my heart, won't be conveyed in my speech. I get nervous to the point of feeling like passing out. So I do have a few tips that I'm going to talk about with that. They are related to like breathing and exercise and really finding your center. So that is going to be really important to you when you start feeling those anxious feelings. And one way to minimize that, I can say right now, because it is loosely tied to what I'm talking about. Number two, about figuring out what scares you, is to allow yourself, when you're not preparing to speak, to allow yourself in the privacy, the sanctity of your own space, to feel some of those feelings and then to cope with some of those feelings and do some of the things that I'm going to suggest in terms of breathing and just trying to relax your mind, visualization, and those sorts of things. So when you are alone and it's not time for you to go on stage, allow yourself, think about, okay, I need to speak. I'm going to speak tomorrow, and then allow yourself to start feeling some of those feelings a little bit. And when you feel those feelings, and then that's when you need to kick in those relaxation techniques, the visualization techniques, the breathing techniques to help minimize that, and practice that periodically, practice that regularly until you are able to minimize that, or you're able to, when you feel those feelings happening, you're able to very quickly sort of gather yourself. I think that that's very, very important. It's also very useful. These feelings, like I said, it's normal that they happen, but where it starts to affect us negatively is when we don't know how to cope with them, okay? So again, I'm gonna tell you a couple of things that I think it's gonna help you with that as well. Number 3 in the 10 tips to overcome speaking anxiety, number 3 is know your material. This is extremely important. You have to know your material. I posted last week on Instagram and I said, if you're comfortable with your content, your confidence will show. If you are comfortable with your content, your confidence will show. You do have to really know whatever it is that you are going to talk about. I also, in preparation for this, did some research on what it takes to have a TED Talk. Like, a lot of us have seen TED Talks and we like them. We think they're really effective. And I know for me, I have said, oh, wow, these are really masterful orators. These are people that have just a command of the language and they really know their stuff, and they seem completely comfortable in front of the camera as well as the audience. And as I was doing a little bit of research on what it takes to do, most of the TED Talks are around 18 minutes. Yes, I absolutely love TED Talks as well. I really appreciate Ayana with those recaps. That's very, very helpful. I definitely appreciate it. But one thing about the TED Talks, they're usually about 18 minutes, somewhere in that range. And for that 18-minute talk, it is a dream of mine too. It's on my vision board. So yay, we can maybe do one at the same time one day. High five. So I would definitely keep that on the altar for you as well. So for an 18-minute TED Talk, it takes about, they say it usually takes about 18 hours of preparation and rehearsal. 18 minutes of actual speaking, 18 hours of preparation. So most of that 18 hours is getting comfortable with your material, rehearsing it so much in your mind, and actually that you can almost recite it verbatim, and knowing what to cut out, what to add, where to add a little bit more substance, where to take something away. All of that is happening during the preparation for an 18-minute TED Talk, during that 18 hours of rehearsing and practicing and preparing. And that 18 hours, I don't even think fully includes the actual preparation of the talk itself. So you probably have at least another 10, 12, 14 hours of actual speech preparation that happens as well. So you may be looking at 20, 24, 30 hours of prep for an 18-minute TED Talk. But it is highly important that you know your material and that you're comfortable with your content, because that increases your confidence. For me, I am a procrastinator. I make no bones about it. I don't lie. I am a procrastinator. But where I think I'm a little bit different in my procrastination is, if I know that I have a speech or something that I'm preparing for, I think about it. I may not actually write down everything verbatim, but I'm thinking about it. You know, in the shower, in the car, I think about that topic. I think about what I want to say. When I have time, I may do a little bit of research. I may read something, or if I am just reading in general and something jumps out at me that I want to remember for that, then I will add it to my trusty Evernote. Remember, this is my list for tonight. So I will add it to Evernote. So while I may not actually script out or do my PowerPoint presentation, because that's what I do when I do webinars, although I may not do that, I know Evernote is the bomb. Yes, you absolutely do need Evernote. I did my first 10 at 10 was on Evernote, but I accidentally didn't record it. So anyway. So I'm compiling things, I'm thinking about it, in my mind, even visualizing ahead of time what it is that I want to say, the ultimate goal and objective of whatever that time together is. I have created presentations for webinars the day of, literally hours before the presentation, hours before my webinar was supposed to start. But I had been thinking about it for days and even weeks, and compiling things and written an outline and things like that. Although I may have procrastinated and waited and actually doing it, I actually had all of the information in my mind in Evernote and compiled together. So it was just a matter of executing that. I don't recommend that for everybody, because, hey, how are you, cuz? For those of you that are already anxious about your about speaking and about that, you don't need to add to your anxiety by waiting till the last minute. So preparation is going to be important, especially if you feel like you are really, really nervous, and especially for those, like the young lady says, that it starts to affect her physiologically and physically. So you need to make sure that you are prepared for that. Yes, you are definitely an excellent researcher and note taker. Your preparation probably doesn't suck as bad as you think. I mean, we are our own worst critics. I can tell you that. And there are a lot of times where I think I completely bomb at a webinar or something, and then I'll get an email or a text message or a mention on Twitter or a comment on Instagram, and people thought I knocked it out of the park, and I'm like, this sucked. This was like one of the worst ones I've ever done, and so I think we're our own worst critics. That's not saying that there aren't always things we can improve on when it comes to our presentations, but Again, when you keep that goal in mind of what you want to accomplish and the message that you want to send with that presentation, then sometimes even if the execution in terms of the words, stuttering, saying, your own feelings of confidence isn't quite at that level, it really, in the grand schemes, doesn't matter, because one of the things that I found consistently in researching this topic about anxiety is that it's not about us. It's about the message that we need to convey and the goal that we have for that particular speech or presentation or what have you. So once we remove ourselves from the equation, thank you, I appreciate it. Once we remove ourselves from the equation a little bit, it becomes just a tiny bit easier, okay? So my hearts are getting a little light tonight. If y'all could just tap for a few times, I would appreciate it. I definitely have a problem with ums. That is, see, that is definitely a challenge of mine. I do have a tip for that, thanks to my friend Kiki and a scope I saw of her earlier, and I'm going to share that a little bit later. And I give her credit for that. So we're talking about the, exactly, the 10 tips to overcome speaking anxiety. Number 1 is acknowledge that you're anxious or nervous. You can't change what you don't acknowledge. Number 2, figure out what scares you. Number 3, know your material. If you're comfortable with your content, your confidence will show. Number 4, the number 4 tip to overcoming speaking anxiety is to connect with your audience. So you really diffuse the anxiety and any fear that you may have when you feel like your audience may be your old friends. One way to do that when you are speaking to people that you don't know is to actually greet them as they enter the room. I've seen this demonstrated at conferences, and it's a very effective tool. This also requires you arriving to the space early enough to get set up so that when the attendees actually enter the space, you're able to stand at the door and actually greet them. And actually, that is how I met my coach maybe about 10 years ago, Simon T. Bailey. He's an amazing author. Google him. He has some books that you absolutely need to read. But anyway, he presented at a conference that I went to, and he was standing at the door as I was walking in, and he greeted every single person that walked in the room, made it very personal, told us who he was, asked our name. And I'm not sure if he was nervous. I'm sure he wasn't, because he had been doing this forever. But it immediately drew me to him. And so it just made me more receptive of whatever he was going to say. He could have been talking about the craziest topic ever, or a topic I had no interest in or knew nothing about, and I would have been riveted anyway because of that simple personal connection that he established as soon as I walked in the room. So for me, that is one thing that I think will help you diffuse your anxiety or any fear that you may have around public speaking by standing at the back of the room or the front of the room or wherever people may be entering and greeting them as they come in. If you can't really do that, another thing that you can do is walk around the room as people are getting seated, or right before your presentation. You can also walk around the room and greet and shake hands and tell them who you are and ask them who they are. Compliment them. There are all kinds of things that you can do to establish that rapport that will hopefully lessen your anxiety when it comes to public speaking. All right, so that's number 4. Number 5 is to use visualization. I used this recently. I had to speak at a conference. It was my first time actually speaking at a conference of this magnitude and this size. And I was so nervous. I was so very nervous because I felt inadequate. I felt like, why are you even talking to me? Why are you even asking me to speak? I am not like the people that are presenting. And it was so funny because when I got there that day, it was even worse in a way because the people that presented before me were utterly amazing. And I'm sitting there thinking, you're not going to get this same thing when I get up there. But then in that moment, I had to use this tip of visualization to kind of center myself. And I was like, okay, Adeea, get yourself together. You got a job to do. You have an assignment. You know, this is what you agreed to do, and this is what you were called to do. You got to get it together. And so I literally sat there because we had a break before I was supposed to present. And I just closed my eyes and I visualized myself on the stage, you know, delivering what I had to offer. And it immediately calmed me. It immediately lessened a lot of my anxiety. And I just like, it's going to be what it's going to be. I'm going to give them the best that I have and hope that they're receptive of it. But visualization is a good technique. I am introverted. I keep telling y'all I am introverted. I'm so introverted. I definitely have introvert tendencies. You just have to see me at an event to know it is not lies. You just have to see me at an event and then you'll be able to tell. Thank you. I'm introverted. I will be in a corner somewhere being anti. I mean, and you know, I'll engage if people come up to me, but sometimes I have to retreat before I engage. I gotta retreat before I engage. Yes, that's why we sit in silence so often. Yeah, I'm telling the truth. Anyway, so I use visualization. Y'all are so funny. That's true. Ambivert. Y'all are making up words now. Y'all are so silly. So use visualization to help. So Sakia was, yeah, Sakia was an outspoken one. That's my cousin. Sakia was, I mean, she is very gregarious, especially between the two of us. Yeah, she definitely is. You can see that now. She's still very, very outgoing and gregarious. And I mean, I have my moments, if you will, but yeah, I'm a little bit of an introvert. All right, so use visualization. Y'all got me off track. To help overcome speaking, grown word. You know what, Ayana? I promise you, I'm gonna put you on Periscope punishment. You're gonna be on Periscope punishment because you are so funny. So we're talking about the 10 tips to overcome speaking anxiety. Number one is acknowledge that you're anxious or nervous. Number 2, figure out what scares you. Number 3, know your material. Number 4, connect with your audience. Number 5, use visualization. Number 6, believe the audience wants you to succeed. Whether they've paid or not, they're sitting in your session or at the event, and they're there because they want to hear what you have to say. They're there because they want to be inspired by you or to learn from you. And so you have to really not have a defeatist mindset or a self-defeating attitude by saying, you know, like, nobody wants to hear what I have to say. Nobody wants to learn from me or anything like that. You have to believe that the people that are sitting out in front of you, the people that are on Periscope, the people that watch your YouTube videos, they want you to succeed because they want to learn from you. They want to be inspired by you. They want to get something from what you have to say. And when I think about that, that just really kind of warms my heart because I think we assume that people want us to fail. And that is, I think, overwhelmingly not the case. Of course, there are haters everywhere. There are people that don't want you to succeed. But I think that percentile of people is so minor, so minute, and so minuscule that in the grand scheme of things, it really doesn't matter. I think overwhelmingly, the people in the room, they are interested in what you have to say, want to say, are going to say, and they are there for it. So you have to be sure that you remember, believe that the audience wants you to succeed. Hi, thank you. Number 7 in the 10 tips to overcome speaking anxiety, I will definitely, yes, you do. You always have something to say. I will definitely recap these for those of you that have come in late. So number 7 in the 10 tips to overcome speaking anxiety is to focus on the goal. The message, which is the message that you want to send. Focus on the goal, and that's the message that you want to send. A lot of times we can get caught up in the hype and the, I don't know, all of the theatrics of our presentation, but what we really need to focus on is the message. That's the goal. Whatever the message is that you want to send about that particular subject or through that particular speech or presentation, that's what you have to focus on. When you focus on that, you sort of forget the people that are out there. You forget a lot of your nervousness, because if it is something that you're passionate about and or knowledgeable about, you have to get it out. I mean, you have to get it out, because it literally is like in the Bible, it says it's like fire shut up in your bones. When you are talking, about something that you're passionate about, that you're knowledgeable about, that you have expertise and education in, you're just like, I could talk about this all day long. And that's ultimately what matters. That's why they always say, talk about what you know. Because you will never run out of content. You will never run out of things to say. You have researched it and you know it. It is almost ingrained in your DNA, those things that you're passionate about and very knowledgeable about and have studied over the course of time. So focus on the goal of your message, of that speaking event, gig, or engagement. And that's the message that you want to send. Number 8 in the 10 tips, well, actually more than 10 tips to overcome speaking anxiety, is to get proper rest and nourishment before you actually are on to present or speak. So you need to get a good night's sleep, because fatigue and tiredness and all of that affects your other chemical and hormones within your body. So if you're really, really tired, that's where that irritability comes from. That's where sort of you're just like laughing one minute, crying the next. You're just kind of off. Yeah, you can't be an insomniac. You have to really work on that, because that is crucial to that. But yes, I too, I get nervous before. And so a lot of times, I will say honestly, I don't eat before I speak. So if I'm speaking at an event that has a brunch or a lunch or dinner or what have you, I really won't eat before then, because I'm just, I am nervous at that point, because I'm looking out, seeing the people, I'm going over the speech, I'm visualizing, like I'm just not in a place where I really want to eat. But you do need to eat, at some point that day prior to that. Oh, Ayana, you're going to be on Periscope punishment. So one thing that you absolutely, coffee doesn't make me go to the bathroom. I think because I drink so much of it. So yeah. So what you do need to do though is to keep yourself hydrated and nourished as possible. So if you're speaking in the evening, you absolutely need to eat breakfast and probably lunch. You need to, make sure that there's something in you before you get up to speak. You need to drink plenty of water, not just the day of, but the days leading up, you need to make sure that you're really, really hydrated prior to doing that, especially if you think you may be nervous, because sometimes those nerves will cause some other physical and physiological things to happen in your body, and where you start to feel lightheaded and all this kind of stuff. And if you're not, if you're a little malnourished or you're not properly hydrated, it could really, really be a not so good situation for you. So make sure that you hydrate yourself, not just the day of, but the days leading up to it. So if you're speaking on Friday, at least by Tuesday, you need to be drinking a little bit extra water. You need to make sure that you're maybe drinking nothing but water, what have you, so that by Friday, you know, kind of your system is flushed out, but then also you are just really, really hydrated and nourished for the event. This is also the time where you want to make sure you eat you know, protein and a well-balanced meal and green vegetables and all of those healthy things that you may not normally eat. Roughage, you want to just really make sure that you have good stuff in your body during that time. Yes, I have several playlists, and calming songs actually help. I have a law of attraction playlist. And so it has some of the songs are calming, but honestly, it's a mixture of like some crunk, there's some old school rap, there's gospel. It's just songs that put me in a really, really good headspace. They motivate me, they inspire me. They're some of my favorite songs. They have positive lyrics or what have you. So like on my playlist is Say Yes by Michelle Williams, It's My Time, Kelly Price, Good Life by Kanye, Finish Strong by Jonathan Nelson or Jason Nelson. I forget which one it is. Another song by Donald Lawrence. That song by Desiree that was back in the 90s. You gotta be strong. You gotta be, you know, that song. All of those different songs are I know, right? All of those different songs are on my Law of Attraction playlist. So that's actually another tip. Like, you really have to do what you have to do to get yourself in that good headspace. And so for me, music is a huge, huge part of that. I am really, really conscious and cognizant of the music that I listen to when I know that I am getting ready to present or to speak or something like that. So just make sure that you have those. I do suggest a Law of Attraction playlist. I even listen to that while I am preparing for a speech or a webinar. And like I said, it's a mixture of all types of music. And I may be able to share that with you at some time. I'll have to figure out how to do that. But yeah, I will try to do that. I'll share the songs that are on that playlist with you. All right, what number are we on? Number 9, in the more than 10 tips to overcome speaking anxiety. Start loud and strong. All right, I will share it with you, not a problem. Ayana, God, you gonna be on Periscope punishment. Okay, so number 9 in the more than 10 tips to overcome speaking anxiety is start loud and strong. You want to make sure that your voice exudes confidence. You don't want to be starting out like this. Yes, the playlist can be a 10 at 10. Absolutely could. You want to start like, yes, I'm here. We are going to do it. We're going to have a good time. You're going to learn a lot. Yeah. All of that. So start loud and strong. A lot of times the best way to do that is to start with a story. Again, that's something that you are shut up. You want to start with maybe a story, especially a personal story about you, because that is going to be familiar to you. Yeah, she definitely needs to scope. I don't know what she's gonna come on the scene and shut all our scopes down. Nobody's gonna be paying any attention to us when Ayana starts scoping, because she's going to start. One way to start loud and strong is to tell and to share a story, especially if it's about you, because that's something that you're familiar with. You know about you know about your experiences, and you're able to share that in a meaningful way. You want to, even if your voice is a little bit louder than normal, you want to really start off from a very confident place and then maybe plateau, or, go down just a tiny, tiny bit, but you want to keep that same high level of energy and engagement. One other thing along those same lines is to memorize the first 3 lines of your speech. What that does is it allows you to make that connection with the audience. You're able to look around and share those first 3 lines and really draw them into you. So during that, memorize the first 3 or 4 lines if you can. You're able to really connect. You're able to step from behind the podium a little bit and move around a bit, and then because you know kind of where you are, then you're able to move back, get your place, and continue on with your speech if you haven't memorized it all or memorized all of your presentation. Yeah, I do have the resting itch face as well a little bit. So sometimes I have to consciously think, okay, smile, Adeea, because even when I'm talking, like I'm just talking like this. When sometimes I just need to be talking like this, but naturally I just kind of talk like this because whatever I'm talking about, I'm friendly. I want to, I think I'm engaging. Itch. I'm not gonna say it. um, and but I sometimes have to be cognizant of the fact that I may not be smiling and people may think or feel some kind of way or assume some things because my face is like this when I am speaking, when I really mean this on the inside, because I'm excited to talk and to be there. But sometimes I'm just like trying to get the information out, because again, for me, I focus on the goal, and so sometimes I'm not always cognizant or conscious of what my face is looking like. So yes, that's something else that I need to work on as well. Ayana, stop being an instigator. Okay, number 10 in the more than 10 tips to overcome speaking anxiety is write down, after the speech is over, write down at least 5 positive things that happened, or 5 positive things that was in your speech. Because if you think, oh, I just bombed, I didn't do well, nobody liked it, da 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 da. No, chances are that is not even remotely the case. Not even remotely the case. There are a lot of people that you need to find something very, very positive in your speech. I think that's vastly, hugely, extremely important that you find something positive about your speech. Huh? No, your scope was not horrible earlier. Don't say that. Yes, we are. I mean, we are. Most of us are definitely our own worst critics. I'm a really bad critic of myself as well. But the hearts give me hope. When people say this is good information, that gives me hope. And so when I feel like I flub and I stumble over things, I keep on going. Because the only way that you're really going to get better at this and decrease your anxiety and any fears that you have is to continually do this. Like I said, I get nervous almost every time, but that level of nerves is a lot less. I started speaking, my first speaking gig, if you will, was at my church on as a senior in high school on Graduate Sunday. I was the keynote speaker for Graduate Sunday. I mean, and my church was, pretty big. That scared the bejeebers out of me. But am I called to preach? I feel that from you. So we're all called to preach because we're all called to share the good news of Jesus Christ. But I have not heard that call, and I have not answered that call as of yet. I do feel like I have ministry in me. My mission field is a little bit different. I think that my mission field is exactly what I'm doing. It is to use technology and the communities that I'm involved in to show God's love and to show His purpose and what He feels about His handmaidens and His sons. That's what I feel like I'm called to do. And for me, I don't have to have a title or letters in front of or behind my name in order to do that. I don't have to have a collar to do that. I feel like I can, because preaching is really just exhortation. It's really just motivation, which is what I do. So that's probably what you feel for me. And I really appreciate that. And I will never say no to anything that God wants me to do, but I haven't necessarily heard that yet. And it may be because I'm running. I don't know. But I definitely feel like I'm walking in my purpose right now. Yes, I do wear the statement jewelry sometimes. Just a little something I threw on. All right, so we're talking about the 10 tips to overcome speaking anxiety. And so number 10 was to write down at least 5 positive things about your speech or your presentation. You need to find those positive things about your speech and presentation, because trust me, there are at least 5. And one of them can be, I got through it without throwing up. It's okay. That is a positive. I got through it without passing out. Somebody smiled during my presentation. Somebody laughed at my joke. Those are all positive things. I mean, I'm telling you, it's real. That fear and anxiety manifests itself in a lot of different ways. Those are all positive things that can happen during your speech. So I've already talked about 10 tips to overcome speaking anxiety. I am going to go through those real quick, and then I have a few more to share. Number 1 is acknowledge that you're anxious or nervous. Number 2, figure out what scares you. Number 3, know your material. If you're comfortable with your content, your confidence will show. Number 4, connect with your audience. Number 5, use visualization. Number 6, believe the audience wants you to succeed. Number 7, focus on the goal, the message you want to send. Number 8, make sure you have proper rest and that you're properly nourished. Number 9, start loud and strong. I misnumbered this. Anyway, number 10, let's see, is use relaxation techniques. Number 11, write down at least 5 positive things about your speech. Number 12 in the list is don't be afraid of silence. So if you need a moment or a couple of moments to gather your thoughts and to figure out where you're going next, if you lose your place, don't be afraid of that silence. You don't have to continue to talk. You can take a moment to gather your thoughts, to figure out what you're going to say. It's usually not as long as you think. Like when you take a pause, you may think that it is forever when it's only a few seconds. And that's okay. People are not uncomfortable with that silence, even when you are, just like now, even when you are trying to figure out the next word that you want to say, they're not uncomfortable with those momentary pauses. And actually, I listened to one of the coaches that I listen to. She takes these long, dramatic pauses, almost to the point where you're like, hello, you still there? She takes these long, dramatic pauses. And it puts you in a slightly uncomfortable place, which is, I'm sure, the rationale behind her doing it, because it's usually after she has either asked a question or said one of her critical nuggets for whatever she's talking about, and she wants it to sink in, and she wants you to um, start dealing with it and grappling with it inside, and it makes you a little bit uncomfortable. So I know that there is a method behind it. So don't be afraid of pauses and moments of silence while you're presenting. Number 13 in the more than 10 tips to overcome speaking anxiety is to ask yourself what if, good and bad. So, and this is what you do prior to the event, like at least days before the event. Ask yourself what if, and ask yourself what if, what if I do well? What if everything goes great? What if people come up to me afterwards and say what an inspiration I was? Ask yourself what if and how that would make you feel. How would you respond? What would that do? What have you? But then also conversely, ask yourself, what if bad? What if I tripped going up the stairs? What if I fumbled everything? Or what if, I had my speech on note cards and they just fell out of order? And I know for a lot of you that are already nervous, you would probably feel like you would just fall to pieces, but you never know. That's a really human moment, but it's also something that you could, hopefully use to kind of laugh at. You can say, well, can't get much worse now. And then people will because they're wondering how you are going to respond to it. And I mean, I have done everything that you can possibly do in public that's embarrassing. So I don't think that I would be overly embarrassed if something like that were to happen to me. I would just try to laugh it off, try to compose myself and gather myself, and then just keep on going. That, to me, that means that I know definitely something good is going to happen here, because it's going to happen here at this speaking event, because anything that could go wrong did. And that's usually when you know that you're on assignment and what you're supposed to say is going to have impact and influence and inspire people there. So you have to just keep on going. You have to keep on trucking. But again, it kind of goes back to what I said. Dr. Phil says, you can't change what you don't acknowledge. So in order to do that, you have to sort of deal with those what if scenarios. What is the worst possible thing that can happen? And then you may not be able to necessarily completely prevent that from happening, but you can deal with some of the anxiety and the feelings that you may have about it happening, so that in the moment you don't completely lose it. You're able to sort of gather yourself and make the best out of that situation. Okay. So for me, like, I have passed out in public. I have tripped going up the stairs. I have fallen down. So for me, there's very little that really embarrasses me to the point where I feel like I don't want to be around, or I don't want to be around people, or I don't want to continue on, or what have you. Yes, I do have that one too. I have that one, and because I'm one of those women that still wear slips sometimes if I feel like what I'm wearing is a little too see-through or clingy or whatever. And so one of my fears is that my slip will fall down. That has always been like one of my fears. But again, like, that's funny to me. I mean, it would be slightly embarrassing, but what are you going to do? I'm not going to allow something like that happening to prevent me from doing what I'm assigned to do at this particular event. I'm just going to step out of the slip, fold it up really nicely, put it underneath the podium, and keep on going. That's all you can do. So yeah, I do. I still do. But I'm just still afraid that is going to happen, that my slip is going to somehow come down or something. And I also have that one about going to the bathroom right before I speak and my skirt is jacked up in the back, or especially if I'm wearing a skirt, like my skirt or dress is jacked up in the back and people can see all my goodness and mercy. So I also have that one. So I do think about those things. And, you know, none of those things have happened. I have passed out before in public, but in terms of some of those other things, none of that has happened to me before. So I imagine the worst and it hasn't happened, and I keep on going and things turn out great and wonderful. Yeah, you just keep on walking. You act like you're like, oh, what? Somebody slipped down there. That's how you handle it. Yes, it was scary. And I actually just recently passed out. So yes, it was scary in a crowded restaurant full of Black people. So that was uber scary. So where are we? This is extremely important when it comes to overcoming speaking anxiety. View your thank you, I really appreciate it. View your presentation as a person-to-person conversation, not a performance. View your presentation as a person-to-person conversation and not a performance. And I think for me, that is how I view everything that I do. That is how I view whether I'm speaking live in terms of to a live audience, definitely when I'm up here on Periscope or when I'm on a webinar, I am all about, this is a conversation between us. You happen to see me, I may not be able to see you, but this is absolutely a conversation. You're able to leave comments. You're able to tap the screen and leave hearts. This is very much a interactive conversation. I talk to you, you talk back to me. And so from that perspective, that really significantly lessens any anxiety that I have. So even though there may be 25 people in the room, I don't feel like there are 25 people in the room. I feel like I'm talking one-on-one to several of you at the same time. There could be 100 people in the room and I would still feel the same. I talk, you type. We make a great team, don't we, Ayana? I definitely view my presentation, my speech as a conversation. When I do things live in front of a live audience, I view it as a conversation. I do look, there are some schools of thought that says don't focus on any one person. I do tend to find a couple of friendly faces in the room and at different locations that I can sort of look at and acknowledge. I don't try, and I'm doing this to demonstrate, I don't try to look up here above the heads because I'm like, unless you're seeing angels, like who you talking to? But I try to focus on where the people are. I may not look directly at them. I may be looking at a glass on the table or, you know, at something on the floor, but I am definitely at their level, looking at their level, even if I don't look directly at them. So if looking at people directly make you nervous, then look at the centerpiece on the table or look at the silverware or look at the plate or whatever is there. But that's still kind of at the level of the people. Or look, I wouldn't even say look above their heads because it's still gonna look like you're not looking at them. That's my recommendation for that. But again, view your presentation as a person-to-person conversation and not a performance. Sometimes you talk to the angels. I do too. I understand. It really does help if you feel yourself getting uber nervous and you're just like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this. That does help. But as you do this more and more, I want you to start to look down a little bit, like start lowering your eye level every time you speak, and then you will become very comfortable with doing that. But you know what, honestly, from an audience perspective, don't you sometimes feel a little nervous when the speaker is looking at you? You're like, what I do, what I say. So that same anxiety that you may feel as a speaker looking at the audience is sometimes feeling the same way about you looking at them. So don't look at someone sleepy. Yes, that could be discouraging, but you know what? I mean, it is what it is. Sometimes I am sitting there and I'm like, oh, geez. I am looking very sleepy, and it's something that I can't help. Like my friend Pam, I love her, but I'm not saying anything about her now. I won't say to her. We were at this event, and sometimes when Pam gets sleepy, like you can immediately tell in her eyes. I was like, if you don't open your eyes in here and stop looking like you're in this wall slide any second. She was like, okay, okay. Yes, so looking at people sleepy is a little, yes, they do. I love her though. All right, so we're talking about the more than 10 tips to overcome speaking anxiety. I don't even know what number we're on right now, 14, but the next one is so super cool, and it is called the power pose. And on my website where the replay will be, I have a link to a TED Talk about the high power pose. There are high power poses and low power poses. So in this TED Talk, Amy Cuddy, I think that's how you pronounce it, talks about how you can sort of overcome anxiety around presentations and interviews and speaking by striking these power poses. And so there are a few power poses, and one of them is one that we all know, and it's kind of the superhero pose. So you put your hands on your hip, you spread your legs a little bit, and you just are kind of, you know how you can stand when you're doing the superhero pose. And they say if you do that for about 2 minutes, it really does lessen anxiety. It lessens any nervousness that you may be feeling about a presentation. Yes, say it with your chest. And you know, I can really say it with mine. Yes. Yes. Superpower pose. Super friends, activate. Absolutely. So that is one of the power poses. Shut up. This power pose kind of really diffuses the anxiety that you feel. And so even if you just run to the bathroom and you stand in the stall and you do that and you visualize you're being up there and commanding that room, commanding that space, I think that you will lessen your anxiety. You will be able to focus on the goal of whatever it is that you're trying to say, the message that you want to convey. So like I said, on the replay page, which is Adeea R. Rogers, ADEEA RROGERS.com/10 AT10, you'll be able to find a link to that video that will be underneath the replay of this Periscope. Let us see. Another tip that I have is to, if you've never watched this movie, but you really are kind of struggling with feeling anxious, is to watch The King's Speech. That, I'm pretty sure it's on Netflix because I think it's in my queue. And it's a movie about King George something or other, and he stuttered really bad. And a speech pathologist worked with him and won all kinds of awards. And a speech pathologist worked with him on overcoming those and gave him some tips and techniques and some tools. But I think one of the things that is just unique about that movie is the fact that you can see someone who is a great leader still had struggles that we all have. And that we all have something to overcome. We all have something that we have to deal with to one degree or another. And you just have to, it's sort of that, which is actually my next tip for overcoming speaking anxiety. It is sort of that Me Too thing. So when, you know, you acknowledge that you're nervous, someone else will say, oh yeah, me too. And that immediately, don't you feel a camaraderie and a connection with that person? And so that's really important to establish that connection when you are speaking. And when you do that, your audience is at ease, you become more at ease, and it lessens the anxiety and the nervousness that you may feel about your presentation. And so that was my next tip, was to use Me Too to connect with your audience. And then the last one is thanks to a scope that I watched earlier from Shishi Sophistication, Kiki, and she is a member of Toastmasters. And I'm like, duh, Adeea, yes, absolutely. One of the best ways to get over anxiety is to join an organization like Toastmasters. And I think she was on her way to a Toastmasters meeting that tonight. And it's just, to me, it is a no-brainer. I think she said the one that she attends, it costs maybe $45 every 6 months, and that includes workbooks and leadership books. It includes magazines that are coming to your house, as well as the experience of being able to speak. I've gone to only one Toastmasters meeting, and it was hugely impactful. It was slightly embarrassing, and I think that's probably why I didn't go back, because I was the only person at the meeting that said the entire time. So I do know that I have to work on because I say it a lot. I say it a whole lot. But see, I say it all the time. But I think Toastmasters would be an amazing experience for you to help reduce some of that anxiety, to become more comfortable with speaking extemporaneously and off the cuff and in impromptu situations, because those are usually all of the things that cause anxiety, that cause the anxiety and fear and nervousness when you are trying to speak, because you feel like you're not really prepared and you feel like you haven't had much practice at doing some extemporaneous speaking, or even if you have time to prepare, you still feel unprepared in a lot of ways. So I suggest, if there is, look for an active Toastmasters club in your area or city. You can go to Toastmasters. Thank you very much, Shug, to find an active meeting in your area. Perfect timing. I think I'm going to look at mine to see if they're still active. Last time they were meeting at the library, so I'm going to maybe try that and see if I can improve my public speaking skills. We're never, ever too perfect, too great, to anything to better ourselves and to improve our skills. So y'all, that's all that I have in terms of my tips to overcome speaking anxieties. I'll entertain any questions that you have, and while you're doing that, I'll go back through the list again for you. And these are the more than 10 tips to overcome speaking anxiety. Acknowledge that you're nervous or anxious. Figure out what scares you. Number 3, know your material. Number 4, connect with your audience. And the example that I use for that is to greet them as they enter the room, or to walk around before your presentation and greet them. Number 5, use visualization. Number 6, believe the audience wants you to succeed, because they do. They want to learn from you. Number 7, focus on the goal, the message that you want to send. Rest and nourishment is number 8 in the more than 10 tips to overcome speaking anxiety. Number 9, start loud and strong. Number 10, use relaxation techniques. Did I talk about that? I feel like I may have skipped over that one. So I think I did. Use relaxation techniques. So one of them is to actually sit in a chair, close your eyes, and then just breathe. All of those meditation techniques that you can use and you can find, there are meditation videos and not songs, but what's the word I'm looking for? Chants, not even chants is what I'm looking for. Exercises that online that they can help you, and books that can help you meditate and help relax. So when you start to really feel yourself get anxious, you want to stop in that moment, try to have a seat, and try to focus on your breathing. Feel what it is that you're feeling. Feel if you can really determine what triggered that feeling. And then as soon as you sort of figure that out, then start to relax and think positive thoughts and breathe deeply. Of course, you would focus on the have a seat part, Ayana. I can't wait to meet you in person. That is going to be hilarious. Yes, ambient. Sit down somewhere. Yes, talking in the mirror does help. I do. I talk with my hands a lot. My dad was like, "Can you stop doing that?" I'm like, "But you don't really understand what I'm saying unless I'm doing this, unless I'm fighting the air." So I do. I talk with my hands a lot. And that's a function of me being nervous sometimes. And so it just helps me get my message out. So that when I was doing all this before, I was like, I can't think of the word I'm trying to, it helped me think of my word. So I try to work on that. I fluctuate between talking with my hands a lot and doing the death grip on the podium, and I don't move at all. So I need to find some sort of medium between that. So a lot of people, some public speech coaches that I have listened to say to keep it within this frame of your body, like between your shoulders, because even if you're being recorded, you want your gestures to be here so that they are still kind of seen on camera if you are doing it. So I usually try to keep it right in this area, but also I try not to be in front of my face too much. So I usually try to keep it right around the girls, like any more attention needs to be drawn to this area. But anyway, so that was use relaxation techniques. Number 11, write down at least. Yes, I do believe that you should move around while speaking if you can. It just helps people to pay attention a little bit more, because if I'm focused and I'm sitting like this, I am going to become a little bit more fatigued and tired because I'm just focusing on this one place. But if it is, now I don't like it, and because this happens in church sometimes, when it feels like you're watching a tennis match and all they do is just go back and forth in front of you the entire time, and you're going like this. Now, I don't like that. But I do like, if you're making a point and you step over here and you're focused on this crowd and you're kind of standing in front of them, and then you sort of come back to the center for another point, and then you go over here and you're focused on this part of the crowd, and then you come back to the center. But I'm not interested in watching a tennis match while you're speaking. No, definitely not. So that was, write down at least 5 positive things about your speech or presentation. Don't be afraid of silence. If you need a moment to gather your thoughts to determine the next word. Ayana. Ayana. Y'all giving all these hearts to Ayana and her foolery. But I appreciate it. Don't be afraid of the silence. Number 13, ask yourself what if, good or bad. Number 14, view your presentation as a person-to-person conversation, not a performance. Number 15 is the power pose. Number 16, I don't even know what number we're on now. Watch the King's speech. Number 17, use me too to connect with your audience. And the last, yes, I will. The last one is to find and join a local Toastmasters. Don't be afraid of the silence. So you want me to say something else about that? Yeah. You and these Periscope. Yes. Yes, she is. All right. So don't be afraid of the silence. If you do need a moment to gather your thoughts or to think of the next word that you're going to say, if you lose your place, if you lose your train of thought, it is okay to take a moment to think about it and then to respond. So we a lot of times we think that it is a lot longer than it actually is. We think it's minutes, and it's usually just seconds before we actually know and understand what it is that we are, trying to say in the next sentence or the next thought that we have. So you don't be afraid of taking a moment or two to gather your thoughts, to find your place on your page, to look at your presentation or refer to it again. Yes, I did too. That's one area that I absolutely need and want to work on, because I talk about things that I am so passionate about. I get emotional about them. And I don't know that there has been a speech that I have done where I haven't cried. And so some of my cries are really ugly cries, and so much so that I gotta get tissue. Some of them are just kind of choking up moments, and I'm able to sort of regroup pretty quickly. But that is one thing that I definitely want to work on, because I do get highly emotional when I do that. So I completely understand where you're coming from with that. What other questions do you have? And while we're talking, tomorrow night, the last night of this week for 10 at 10, tomorrow night's subject will be 10 differences between mentoring and coaching. So we're going to talk about that, because a lot of people use those words interchangeably, and they're not interchangeable. I'm glad that you enjoyed it. I hope that it was helpful. Why are you glad that you shared mad that you shared too much? I don't think you shared too much, unless I missed that scope. Was that the scope this morning? Thank you. I really appreciate it. You are so welcome, Six. Oh no, when you share what is going on with you, I have my own story. I haven't shared it all yet, but when you share what is going on, it is not unprofessional. The Bible is very clear that we overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. And you shared your testimony because people can see who you are now and how you are now, and they can see that whatever happened in your past didn't affect you to the point that you crawled in a hole and hid. And it is so important that we share. What the enemy wants is for us not to share it, and for us to feel ashamed, and for us to feel like what we are saying is unprofessional. What's unprofessional is people doing those things to us. What's unprofessional is people hurting us intentionally. That's what's unprofessional. Your sharing what you went through in your life is not unprofessional. Absolutely, it does help those that may be struggling still. And a lot of times, what I tell people, what you have gone through in life, what I've gone through in life, it isn't always from about me or because of me or for me. It's for someone else. That is how I am able to tell people it's going to be okay. You are going to get through this. Absolutely. Six told all her stuff, and she's stronger and she's wiser and she helped people, because I saw her Periscope and people were helped and they were blessed. I was blessed because I didn't even know some of those things. And so never ever be ashamed of telling your story and of sharing your truth, because it's your truth. And I guarantee you there is at least one person on this planet that will be helped by what you say. And if that one person, because of what you share, is able to go on and face tomorrow, then you should not feel any shame, any fear, any guilt for what you're sharing with people, because it is for them. It is to help save someone's life. Okay? So never, ever, ever, ever be ashamed of that. You weren't being unprofessional. Absolutely. We do. I mean, because it goes back to that Me Too mentality. A lot of people suffer in silence. That's why a lot of people end up hurting themselves and committing suicide, is because they feel like they're the only ones that are going through anything, that they're the only ones that are going through this particular storm or trial or hardship. And when they find that there's at least one other person that went through the exact same thing that they're going through, but look at them now, wow, that gives them hope. That lets them know, I can make it till tomorrow. I can make it through this, because look at her. This happened to her when she was little. This happened to her when she was younger. And she's, successful and loved and loving and a parent and a nurturer. And she didn't let all of her past and all of those things make her bitter and hardened and mean-spirited and, hard to live with and ornery and contrary and all of those things. You are none of those things. And it's like the cliche that says, I don't look like what I've been through. You absolutely don't look like it. And so when you share your story with people, then they're able to see what is possible when you forgive and when you go on living and when you learn to love yourself, and when you allow love back in your life. They're able to see what happens with all of that. So don't feel like you were unprofessional, because you weren't. You were helpful.